It's not unusual, the things that I dealt with as a kid, but most people don't talk about them as candidly as I do. And I think we need to, because when we shove those things down as younger people,
Hmm.
maybe traumas we've experienced, maybe difficult relationships, and then, of course, the generational inheritance that comes from great grandparents to parents to us, all the stuff that they carried that may have been difficult and stressful for them kind of lands on the next generation, right?
Welcome to the Carolina Senior Talk Podcast, your trusted source for all things related to senior living in the Carolinas. In each episode, we'll guide you through the best locations, offer advice on buying a home, and share tips on relocating within this beautiful region. Whether you're exploring new senior communities, considering a move, or looking to invest in your current dream home, we've got you covered. So sit back, relax, and get ready to discover everything you need to know about senior living in the Carolinas. Well, hello there, folks. Welcome to another episode where we talk all things senior, called carolinaseniortalk.com. So welcome. We have a special guest today, but before we introduce her, I just want to introduce a topic here. It's something that we as seniors experience. It's called anxiety. It's one word, anxiety. And the question is, why do we have anxiety? How do we deal with it? And we have no better person to talk about than the Anxiety Avenger herself, Bonnie Brindle. Bonnie, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be with you, Dave.
Well, I'm glad you were able to make it and glad we were able to schedule this time. In a nutshell, what drew you to focus on support for seniors? Tell us about that.
Well, I retired last year from 25 years in education, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And now I am in the senior group at the age of 63. And I dealt with debilitating panic disorder and agoraphobia when
Mm,
I was in my early 20s. And I know that as seniors, some of the things that we face, like having to change our homes, maybe losing a spouse, end of career, all these things can trigger our anxiety in ways similar to my anxiety was triggered as a younger person. So I decided to write a self-help book about that to help people recognize, first of all, what anxiety is
yeah.
and be able to find the roots of that in ourselves, and then start working a path out while we are in the big transitions that we face over the age of 60.
And so how do you offer your services?
Well, I'm at individual therapy,
Mhm,
and I also do group coaching, not more than 10 people in a group.
mhm.
I have online memberships where I come on live twice a month with larger groups of people that sign up for that, and we talk about all the issues behind senior anxiety and work on strategies together to release it. And so that's a twice a month type of thing. And my
Mhm.
book is helpful in that way as well. And I'm also I wrote a couple of short courses, but I decided to write a longer senior workbook where we can look at some of the issues that we face. We can go through some individual practices. There are some peer-to-peer ideas for getting together with other seniors and talking about and working on strategies for reducing our stress levels. So I decided that I'm taking those two short courses and turning them into a workbook, which I'm working on right now, and that'll be
Oh,
ready
excellent. Excellent.
easily by the end of June, if not before.
So you provide a constructive path for people who really need to get beyond the anxiety.
Yes, and let's face it, Dave. It's a fact as we are get to be over 60 and start looking at the direction that life will take over the next 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years, that it will involve some really big changes. And if we've been kind of in the same place, in the same job, and the same people have been around us for years, and some of those things start to shift and maybe drop off,
Yeah.
it becomes a time of loss,
Yeah.
right? So we need to look at what the gains can be at the same time we're dealing with some of those potential losses as seniors.
Before we dive deeper into this,
Hmm.
I always throw out a gauntlet. Okay. And this is where we have a little bit of fun. This
Oh,
is going to be
ho.
boomer trivia.
Oh, I'm ready.
So you think you can handle that?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Watch out, folks. She's competitive. All right. Pop culture, out of the pop culture. Let's see if we can find something really. Which sport did the Kennedys play on the White House lawn? A, volleyball, B, croquet, C, touch football, D, polo. This is on the White House lawn.
Croquet. I think it was B.
That's your final answer.
Yes.
You're sure about that?
No, but it's my final answer.
That's your final answer. The answer is touch football. I remember images of them playing up at in Massachusetts, their compound up there.
Yes, I should know that. I grew up in Massachusetts. Somehow I saw them with little mallets playing croquet on the White House lawn. I guess I was wrong about that
You
one.
know,
Darn it.
I bet they played croquet too.
I bet they did.
Oh my gosh. All right, on to let's talk about television. Okay, here's an easy one. What was Archie Bunker's nickname for his son-in-law Michael on All the Family? A, dummy, B, meathead, C, loser, D, boob.
He was such a lovely gentleman, Archie Bunker.
Archie
Um,
Bunker.
yes, and poor Michael, he was meathead.
He was meathead. I got that one. I know that one. That is correct. Meathead it
Yes.
is.
Oh,
Yay.
she's a winner.
All right.
Winner.
It was pass fail. You passed. We may move on. All right. That's always a lot of fun.
Phew.
Uh, so
God.
you didn't get into this level of service, this level of coaching with your seniors just by happenstance. You've got a backstory that supports this. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, looking at my own family, let's see.
Mm,
Yeah. As a young kid, I developed an anxiety disorder in middle school. My family was extremely dysfunctional. My dad was an alcoholic. I had a sibling who was an alcoholic. My mom was
oh,
extremely unhappy and kind of keeping the whole thing together and all of that. And I'm a very sensitive person and very much connected to nature and wildlife. And so I wanted to spend all my time out of the house, away from the craziness, which really helped me a lot. But having to live in that kind of soup
mm,
got me to a point that I was kind of anxious, worrying about my dad coming home drunk, and and I'm not saying things that I'm sure plenty of your audience are like, "Yep, check, yep, been there, check." It's not unusual the things that I dealt with as a kid, but most people don't talk about them as candidly as I do, and I think we need to, because when we shove those things down as younger people,
mm,
maybe traumas we've experienced, maybe difficult relationships, and then of course the generational inheritance that comes from great grandparents to grandparents to parents to us, all the stuff that they carried that may have been difficult and stressful for them kind of lands on the next generation, right? And people of my age and older grew up in a time where you just suck it up and move. You don't talk about what's going on with you.
true.
People didn't go to therapy much, right? It would have been great for me as a kid, but that certainly wasn't going to happen. And now that I see the benefits of not only what I call the old playbook of talk therapy and medication, which are still very popular and very much used, but I also feel limited because I've got lots of help from talk therapy
Mm.
and from a short stint with medication when I was younger. But energy therapies and somatic modalities and a time in nature and reconnecting to our source has really helped me move more forward. But like I said, people our age and older sucked it up, didn't talk about things, didn't deal with that. And that stuff lives within us, in our minds and our bodies, and it stays. And it comes out in relationship difficulties and relationships at work, anger and frustration and withdrawal and confusion and rejection and all these things, right, are really rooted in anxiety that's never been unblocked. And it can be unblocked safely rather than always medicated. So
So
part of me was writing the book to let people know about that,
yeah.
like the things that I went through and how I deal with them to help other people.
So you relied on a lot of traditional methodologies, if you will, to get you there. But it sounds to me like you've also discovered a lot of other newer techniques. We've gone
Yes.
from a point where people didn't talk about it to your exploration. You had to deal with it,
Hmm.
but you had I don't know if luxury is the right word, but you had the ability to go back and reflect and learn from it so that you can pass it along to others.
Yes, I have. And
Yeah.
I would call that resilience. I had the
Yes.
resilience to take a deep look at it. Once I decided that I was going to go on, I did have a very dark moment when I gotten myself into college, which was a really big deal out of my family,
Mm,
and to a program that I was so excited about. And I felt, oh, I'm out of the house, my future, here we go. And my anxiety just lit up like a fire. And I ended up dropping out of my college experience after my first semester because I couldn't go to and stay in classes. And
hmm
that was devastating to me. So at that time, I had to make a decision. And fortunately, I made the right one, which was to pick up the phone and call a therapist myself as a 19-year
Excellent.
old.
Excellent.
And then, yes, the energy therapies like EFT tapping, like Jin Shin Jitsu, meditation, the wildlife imagery, nature piece that I've developed years
hmm
ago as a practice launched me more forward even than the initial talk therapy and the short stint with medication that I used, which were both helpful, but were not enough to
Right.
really help me ground myself. And I live completely differently than I did. With panic disorder and agoraphobia, I went through stages where I couldn't ride an elevator, I couldn't get on a train, I couldn't fly
Wow.
anywhere. I
Wow.
was really stuck at home for a while.
Yeah.
And that was the last place I wanted to be. So, yeah, resilience. I said, I got to get out of here. I got to figure this out.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Thanks, me too. And now I help others do that, which is
There
such a
you go.
gift, right?
So seniors, let's drill down on those in that segment, if you will. Why is it? What is it about seniors that is prone to generating anxiety? What is going on in their life?
Oh my gosh.
What is
Whew.
going on in our lives?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Hello, we're over 60. We're in the pool. We are in the pool. So, yes, we have to look at what's happening in our lives. And human beings, human lives are finite. We don't like to think about that, but they are, just like our pets, right?
Mhm.
Eventually, the nickel's going to run out on the ride, and we're going to go on to wherever we go next. And so sometimes health issues come up, the literal giving out of parts of our physical selves. And
Mhm.
if we haven't taken good care to drink lots of water and eat well and exercise, sometimes those things come sooner and with more power. So we get concerned about that, and then concerned about aging out if you've had a partner or someone close to you that's close to your age that means a lot to you.
Mhm.
And eventually we're all going to go. They may go before us and we could feel left alone. And then the managing of a house, I live in a house with several levels and a big yard to deal with and all of that. We get to a point where that's too much, right? And some people think ahead of that and think, yeah, I'm going to downsize to something simpler. And other people they want to stay right where they've been for how many years. They want that change. And sometimes that comes as a harder and more immediate change when we're not able to continue taking care of all the things that we need to do
Yeah.
and taking care of ourselves in the spaces of our homes, right? And so fast forward maybe to somebody who does move into, say, assisted living and finds themselves the home they were in is gone. Maybe some of the people are gone, and they're in a smaller space. Might feel more confined, and it takes a while to develop the feeling of, wow, I don't have to drive anywhere, so not having my car anymore might be a good thing. I don't have to take care of that house and the yard and all those things anymore, so that could be developed into a positive. And there are other people here who have similar experiences who could understand me if I get to know them, so that could be seen as a positive. But all of those things leading up to those changes, they're scary and they're
Yes.
hard.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah, and
are.
I think different people approach it differently. Some people are more pragmatic about it, and other
Yes.
people don't want to discuss it at all. It's just
Yes, I remember back when you and I first met and we were chatting about our
yeah.
personal lives, and we talked about a situation where one side of the family was pragmatic. We know this is happening. Let's plan for. And another side was, I don't want to talk about this. And human beings, man, we're
Yes.
all on a spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It certainly motivated us. My wife and I, made some decisions as, after we dealt with some of the family, journeys, if you want to call them that.
hmm
It
hmm
motivated us to make some important decisions in our lives, and
Yeah.
I
That's
guess the
great.
pragmatic side came out for us.
Yes, that's fantastic.
One of the things that comes to my mind is how do you know when a loved one is experiencing anxiety? Because so often we're good at hiding these things. We don't want to admit that we are feeling lonely, or we miss our partner, or I don't want to leave these four walls that I call home and go to another place that's four walls that's strange to me and it's not home to me.
Mhm.
And so how do you identify those things in a parent?
And anxiety in anyone is similar in some ways, but certainly in a parent. Okay, first of all, you're the child. It doesn't matter if you're 50. You're still the child to your parent, right? So they still look at that and not necessarily want to take advice or direction from the child, even though they may be quite mature adult. But to see anxiety in someone, especially in the boomer generation and older, is usually masked by other emotions. Maybe getting easily to anger, lighting up and no, da 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 da, like, getting and speaking at people in a way maybe that they didn't do before. Maybe withdrawing instead of getting anger, turning it inside and refusing to relate, refusing to speak about any of it. Holding on to things, some people hold on to physical things, become really important. Some of the
Yes.
things that maybe remind us of places and times and people that we've lost, get squirreled away or really held on to, and don't touch that. And people moving, like that box, don't even look in it. That's not your thing. Any kind of real defensiveness that can come both outward, like in the anger and frustration, and be more inward in the withdrawal and refusal to connect with other people around it. But those are signs generally of anxiety. Then some people really show anxiety itself instead of being masked necessarily by anger. Can be really really sad and talk about being afraid. I don't want to go to a place I don't know anybody. I'm worried about what's going to happen next, or start to become worried about things like potential crime around the home, or worrying about fire and things like that people didn't maybe think about or talk about before,
Yeah.
but can start to imagine other losses when big losses have happened, but to actually become more nervous. And you can tell when somebody is showing anxiety raw, is they just become more nervous about, and sometimes little things that you think like, that didn't used to bother that person before, but now they're talking about it like it's a fear. That's also a key for sure.
Now, there are probably people who are listening who are maybe more clinically oriented. So let me throw it back at you and say, if you were talking in clinical terms,
Yeah.
what would we be talking about?
As far as what anxiety looks like.
Yes.
Oh, okay. The generalized anxiety, when I was mentioning things that something that your loved one may not have been afraid of or really thought about or at least talked about
Mm.
before in the general world. Phobias. People can become afraid of certain things, like phobias about health issues. I'm afraid I'm going to have a heart issue. I'm afraid I'm going to fall if I do this. I'm afraid that something specific. And then these can even go into things that seem completely unrelated. Like some people have phobias of different kinds of insects, or fear of the dogs that were in the neighborhood that I never really was worried about before, and now I don't really go out in the yard because I'm afraid of the people going by with their dogs. Like things that like wouldn't make sense or seem connected. But yes, phobic anxiety, that is a big thing for seniors. And the generalized anxiety, like we said, that bad things are going to happen to me around in the world around me. And social anxiety. A lot of us have a few close friends and
Hmm.
maybe, some close family members that maybe don't live near us anymore. But when we start to lose some of that, the idea of, and I remember this really well with my own mother, she was not willing to talk with people that she didn't know from before, right? I don't want to get to know all these new people I've never
Interesting.
seen before, right?
Interesting.
This and the social, some people feel embarrassed, as normal as all this is. Some people feel embarrassed. They don't want to engage with caretakers, and people that service people that can help with their needs. They don't want to engage with them because they're embarrassed, or they don't want them to know their secrets, or that kind of thing. So the generalized, the phobic, and the social anxiety are big issues in our
Good to
age
know.
group.
So, what
Yeah.
are the most common ways to treat these conditions?
Well, the most common ways. First, people stuff it and they don't talk about it.
Wait. Okay.
Second, they fight with their family members,
Yeah.
right? Those are some things that we do. And then, most commonly, if people do access therapies, most commonly is talk therapy, which,
Hmm.
like as I mentioned before, can and is and has been to me useful in the past. I feel that, especially in the US, medication is too often too fast the answer that the medical community will come up with.
Yeah.
And a friend said this to me, a friend in the health world said this to me recently. It was such a simple phrase and it was so profound. Just, she said, the lack of medication isn't the problem. And I just thought, well, that's genius. She's right. People are struggling with anxiety and fear and phobias and all of that. The problem isn't that they're not medicated. The problem is that energy is stuck in their minds and their bodies, and they don't have a way to get it out. So, yes, talk therapy is one really great way to start. And that is often combined with medication, again, in my opinion, too quickly.
Too quickly.
But there are safe ways to unblock energy, Dave, that aren't new, that have been used by other cultures for literally thousands of years to treat each other in a medical practice that as Americans we have rejected. And personally, I feel we've been robbed by the medical community people, some of them who say that these things are woo-woo. You've heard the term, everyone has said it at one time or another. Oh, that tapping thing, that energy modality, that breath practice, that meditation, it's woo-woo. It's not real. It doesn't work. Yeah, it does. And there was a time when chiropractic, if you can remember, you're old enough to remember, I do, when chiropractic was seen as woo-woo, kind of
Hmm.
on the out edge, like, yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know if it really helps. Now chiropractic is covered by a lot of medical organizations cover it. Acupuncture, number two, woo woo. Oh, yeah, that sticking a bunch of needles in, what's that going to do? Well, that's going to help you release energy that's blocked in your tissues so you can feel better. Acupuncture is also covered by a lot of medical organizations now, when it wasn't even heard of when I was a kid. So our progress is very slow.
Yeah, I think
But
the biggest issue in my mind is the acceptance from the insurance companies.
yes,
Yeah.
and people don't make a big profit, Dave, on acupuncture and emotional freedom techniques and Jin Shin Jitsu and imagery and breath work. There's not money to be made there. And I'm sorry, but I'm speaking the truth. Because if you take a look at what the profit margins are for drug companies in this country, and what every ad on television we have allowed, made legal, that every other ad on TV is some drug that you should ask your doctor Dave about, right? I
Yep.
mean, we're
Yep.
medicating ourselves into illness
Yep.
instead of looking at, like I said, some of these practices from Eastern cultures that have literally helped people for thousands of years. And they help me every single day, every
I-
day.
Is there a particular one that maybe people don't even know about, or that maybe they do know about, that you find particularly effective? Or can you even? It depends on the patient, maybe. I don't know.
Um, it's a couple that I find effective across the board that people have gotten a lot of benefit from. One of them is EFT tapping, and EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And like acupuncture, like acupressure, like Japanese Jin Shinjitsu, EFT helps us to move energy through the blocked pathways in our bodies. So when we have pathways that run from our head to our toes, our fingers and our toes. And the energy is always moving. We forget, Dave, that we're energetic beings, right?
Hmm.
When we
Hmm.
get up, touch up against somebody else, there's a force field coming out of our bodies all the time, right? And when we can direct our energy to places where, like maybe witnessing or experiencing a trauma gets, oh, I'm so afraid that was so terrible. Ah, and we hold it and it lives
Hmm.
inside of us, right? So in those practices, we can actually release that stuff out of the body so then we're not carrying it anymore. And EFT tapping incorporates talk. This is what's going on for me. This is how I felt. I was really afraid when, blah, blah, with tapping on the meridians that start at the top of the head,
Hmm.
go to the inside of the eyebrow, outside of the orbital bone, under the eye, under the nose, under the bottom lip, to the clavicles and underneath the arm. Going through the meridians and tapping on them while talking about, I was really afraid when that car came up behind me and I can still hear the crash and my neck hurt really badly. And that energy that we're still holding can literally be moved out of the body. And
Wow.
I know I'm talking to seniors who are like, what? It's real. It works. I use it every day and it helps me ground myself when I get stressed about something or need to release old stuff, for
That
sure.
is interesting. That's
Isn't it?
something I didn't know anything about. Wow.
Yes.
Hmm.
Most Americans don't because we have been blocked from that because you can't make billions of dollars like that you get like you can on drugs.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Hmm.
So, if you're in a situation, in a family situation, or just a loved one or somebody you care about,
Yeah.
what can you recommend to them to deal with this? How do you coach your loved one through this process? I think the first thing is reach out for help, I would
Yes.
imagine.
Right. So you're saying like for family members recognizing that someone that they care about needs help?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Man, that's a hard place. That's a hard first step, right? All across the country, there are senior centers. You can pick up, you can get online, senior centers near me.
Yeah.
There are senior centers all over the country, and every single one of them is connected to service organizations and people who know what you're looking at when you're starting to see your senior struggle. They've heard it a million times, they know how to help you, etc. Right? So that to me would be the very first thing to do. If I had a family member who I knew was struggling and I didn't even know how to approach them yet, or ready to talk about it, first off, is I would get with the local senior center to see what offerings they have. They have counselors sometimes. They have people who can come in with connect to like Meals on Wheels and kind of that kind of thing. If there's a issue with cooking and food, but they have all of the information that a family would need to start with. And I think it's very, very important right from the get go. Caregivers and family members who are responsible for helping organize the needed changes need someone to talk to themselves,
Right. Right. I can
right?
imagine that. Yep.
To being with that alone when that process is first starting is so overwhelming. And not only do they need, the guidance of what are the steps, what do I do here, but I'm watching my parent or whatever loved one really struggle, and this is really hard for me. I don't know how to talk to them. How do I bring these things up? So getting some professional advice for that is really useful. That's not a time you want to be alone trying to figure out
Exactly.
what to say and
Too
what to
much at
do.
stake. Too much at stake.
Too much at stake. And even when the relationship with that loved one is good, it's incredibly difficult to start having those conversations. People get angry, people get
Hmm.
defensive, people get accusatory. And then never mind if maybe that relationship was a bit rocky in past years and you're dealing with a parent that maybe you're not really close to or you don't have a perfect relationship with. Wow, it's tough stuff. So yeah, getting those resources lined up through the local senior center that you can call for information would be my number one step.
Good to know that.
Yeah. And
The
then the National Council on Aging, the NCOA.org, also all the list, all the things, all the ideas, because that's what they do. That's what they help the people hand out. The NCOA.org give you information.
Now you've obviously got a lot of experience doing this, and that's what sets you apart from me. I mean, you're a professional at your job, and you know how to engage and coach, and you recognize the situation and know how to guide somebody, which is just I appreciate that so much, and just some of my life experiences myself. But turning to a professional who really knows how to deal with that is and knows the right language. That's the key.
Yeah.
Um, that is so important. But I'm sure that you've got a story that perhaps you'd like to share, where your skills kind of came to the forefront and you were able to help somebody. Tell us about that, if or tell us one story if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. I'm smiling because I met the most amazing woman recently. She was in her 80s. She is in her 80s. Just met her recently. And she and her husband own a pool hall, and she calls it an old-timey pool hall. And I said, well, what do you mean by old-timey? She goes, look, girl, there's no video games. There's no neon signs. You come in, play pool, and we have a good time, and that's it. I said, sounds great. And she talked to me a little bit about her soul friends. She's checking it out. Her soul friends. So what do you mean by that? She goes, and she's a super expressive, like, gregarious. She was all over the place with me. She says, I've never met a stranger. I can talk to anybody. I get friends, where we live in our independent and assisted living facility. Everybody wants to be my friend. Blah, blah. I'm like, okay, what's a soul friend? And she said, the people who know me on a soul level, who
Hmm.
knew me a long time ago, and I'm not just meeting them. She goes, all of them are gone. I'm the last one. And that is my greatest loss. She goes, oh, I've been through two husbands already. Pff, yeah. It's the soul level friends. I'm like, okay, what's the difference? And she said, we had tire swings. We went out by creeks and played in the mud. We, um, you know, we would go out of the house in the morning and not come back until the streetlights came on.
Yep.
Said, yeah, I remember all of those things.
Yep.
Hunting for tadpoles in the ponds, and I grew up near a beach, so I watched the minnows and the crabs. And oh, girl, I feel you, I get you. And I have people in my life who understand me on those levels too, right? And she said, yeah, well, those are gone for me. And that was her biggest loss. And I really started thinking about how to help seniors who are in that situation. Here I am surrounded by other seniors. Maybe friendship is fairly easy for some. Maybe for some it is not. But how can we connect, not just on the losses that we have, not just on the having to leave the house and the end of the job and maybe the loss of a spouse and the family moving away and all the things. And I thought, okay, it's all before that, Dave. It's connecting before we had a job, before we had a spouse, before we had children, before any of this happened. Anyone 60 and over can relate to connecting on what did you do back then in the tire swing days, as I call
Mhm.
them. What can you tell me about? So I'm going to ask you directly, Dave. Tell me something about your tire swing days that you still hold on to, that you still go back to like a happy place. Something that happened for you. What
For
did you do?
me,
Yeah, I'm asking you.
the smell of you're making me really go back. The smell of pine trees that I was laying underneath because I was playing hide and seek from the other kids in the neighborhood.
There
And
you
I
go.
just remember laying on the needles going, man, this smells good.
Smells so good, right? All of us humans, before phones, cars, televisions, computers, we all came from nature. We are designed to live in nature, not where we put ourselves. So all of us have those. You have those pine trees. I have the tidal pools at the beach with the crabs and the minnows in them.
Yeah.
Someone else has making mud pies somewhere. Someone else has playing
Remember
hockey
that?
on the frozen pond when you were
Yeah.
little, right?
Yeah.
And falling through on the edges when it was spring and you shouldn't have been skating anymore. All of that, right? We all lived those things. And that's a kind of share that I work with people on connecting each other around. There's none of that other pain and loss stuff, right? We all have those kind of memories. So yeah, I call them the tire swing days.
Well, we
And
tend to remember the positive stuff. Like I remember the smell to this day, but
yes.
I just remembered, oh man, the sap that got all over my hands when I tried, you couldn't get it off.
Oh, come on, that's a positive. You smelled like a
Oh,
palm tree for a week.
I'd go back in a heartbeat to do that.
Of course you would. And just the
Mm.
little things. Oh gosh, I remember there was a near my house. I don't know why where there was. I'm like, here's the beach, here's my street, here's my house. There's this warehouse, this little warehouse, like tucked back somewhere, that the local chip company stored their chips in. And the driver would come, and this is like near Salem, Massachusetts, and had a little witch on him. The driver would come and
Of course.
store chips in the thing. I don't know why they did that. But the kids and I would say, oh, here he comes. Here comes the chip guy. We'll go running over there. And once in a while, he would give us one of those little bags of chips. And I could smell. I can smell that. Smell is such a strong, everyone has a smell that they love
Yeah.
from when they were a kid, right?
Yeah.
It's such a strong, it brings up such strong emotions. But yeah, I remember that chip guy. There's stuff like that we can share with smiles on our faces. Because I'm sure none of us had perfect childhood. I sure didn't. But those things that I remember that live right here are really great to share with other people.
Oh man, I love those memories.
Yeah.
Well, we are running out of time here, Bonnie, and I so much enjoyed this. We are going to have to do a second episode. I have no doubt. But
Great.
if people would like to reach out to you,
Mhm.
how can they do that?
Okay. Well, that's easy. My name, bonniebrindle.com, is my main website. And then as a speaker, you can find out the types of talks that I give, and my book is on there as well as my regular website, bonniebrindlespeaks.com.
Okay.
Also pretty simple. And I'm sure that people who use LinkedIn can just find me by my name. People on Facebook can find me by my name. And then I'm sure that next time when we talk, I'd love to talk to you about exactly what crazy makers are that tend to create that anxiety in us that we were talking about that's hard to identify. That was what I used as the title. Here, I'll show you the little cover. The title of my book, The Cracking the Crazy Maker's Code, which is what nine simple steps to ease your anxiety, but which is the work that I did as a younger person to figure out. I know that I feel different from other people. I knew that I was really struggling with anxiety, and I looked around me and it seemed like other people didn't really have that struggle. Maybe
Mm.
they did, but they weren't sharing it. But then I went on a quest to figure it out. And I didn't imagine until I retired from my 25-year education career last year that I was going to write a book about it and tell the details. Like, how did we get here and where to go? What do we do? Because but there aren't enough people talking about that. We're all kind of keeping it to ourselves, especially those of our age and older.
You
It's
know
like,
what? You may have retired, but you still got a lot to give back and
oh,
contribute.
yes, I
Yeah.
retired from that career and I'm in a whole different one and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
loving it. Yeah.
Good for you. I'm so happy to have met you and had this opportunity to engage with you. Um,
Thank
to get the book, you can go to bonniebrindle.com.
you. You can get the
Uh,
book there. You can get my newsletter there. Yep.
and can you get also on Amazon or anything like that? Or
It's also on Amazon
okay,
and Barnes and Noble. But if you
okay.
go to the website, I can ship it at the same price as Amazon. I can ship it to people personalized. Hey,
So
Dave.
go to the website, folks,
Yeah, it's more fun.
bonniebrindle.com.
It's more
Very
fun.
good. Well, thank you, Bonnie. This was terrific. I enjoyed it and look forward to the next one that we do together.
I love it. That's great. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. You take care.
You too.
Thank you
Bye, Dave.
for tuning in to the Carolina Senior Talk podcast. We hope you found today's episode both informative and helpful. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review and share it with those who might benefit from our advice. If you or anyone you know is looking to buy, sell, or relocate to the Carolinas, or you simply want to know how much equity you have in your home, be sure to contact me at www.carolinaseniortalk.com. Until next time, we wish you the best on your senior living journey in the Carolinas. Thank you for listening once again, and talk to you soon.